That wasn't my comment. Mine was simply that there's staffing. People.
This is being recorded, so we'll need our microphones.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second by Councillor Isaacson. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Now have a motion to close the meeting to the public.
I move that council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 90 part 1, A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. C, labor relations or other employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And 90 part 2, B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence related to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
By Elliott. All in favor? Thank you. Yes. Dean.
Nice.
Please.
What's that noise? Oh.
Events in the community.
We will now reconvene our council meeting. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're holding this on the traditional territories of the Klamath Nation. We'll now move to a public input period. Here, members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment for a maximum of 2 minutes on items listed under legislative matters, committee recommendations, or new business. Do we have anybody wishing to provide? Please come forward.
Good evening, John Brown Self, a resident of Powell River. I see again we're talking about property tax rates. So I cannot seem to find anywhere that between this and regional and hospital and every other tax going on, can anybody, do you guys have the figure that is going to be the total presented to the public as a percentage?
Ask our acting CAO, Councillor Elliott, do you have an answer?
I don't have an answer. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that this isn't a question period, but an input period. So if we're making decisions tonight, we want to hear what you have to think about that, and then we consider it. We're not supposed to be answering questions right now. And if there's questions, we're supposed to do those during the question period. And the whole idea was that we would hear from the public things that we would consider in our decisions for tonight. And so the reason I'm separating that is not because I want to be a stick in the mud, and I don't want you to, and I want you to have your answer. It's just that's how the procedure is set up. That this is a listening session, and then the one at the end is the question session. And I just, because it's new, people might not know that. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. So you're welcome to come back at the end of the meeting.
And they'll probably get an answer for you by then.
Hi, Catherine Yorlofson. As you raised the thing about the procedure, why can we not ask the questions before you vote?
I think that's a question, and that.
Well, she talked about the procedures. Okay, I'll rephrase that. I think that it is incorrect for us to have the questions after the voting. And I'd like you to consider that maybe at some point in the not too distant future, you could change that so that we have something to questions prior. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doubt.
I'm going to jump in and try to help too. You know, in my opinion, why this public input period is at the beginning of the agenda was that so members of the public could look at the agenda, look at the items on the agenda. And if you wanted to influence council, you could stand up and make comments. Tell us what your opinion is, what you'd like to see council think about, and what you would like us to do. The question period is at the end in order for the public to be able to ask council questions about what happened during the meeting. That logically comes after the meeting is over. So, you know, I think it's going to take some getting used to, but we're actually welcoming people to look at the agenda, come to council with comments on what they would like council to do about the items on the agenda. Not in the form of a question or an argument, just simply to make a statement on your point of view.
Do we have any other public input?
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. With reference, my name is Barrick Pocklington. With reference to section 11.5 in today's meeting minutes, although the engineering department has decided to recommend that my application be rejected, I feel it's especially important to understand in the second portion of my application that replacing a fire hydrant should be a cost not borne by a small property owner, with the intention of simply building a small bungalow on the 10,000 square foot property. There are no plans to subdivide or turn it into something other than building a single family home upon it. So please keep in mind that I consider it unreasonable to expect a public utility such as a fire hydrant to be financed solely by a single property owner and not through municipal taxes, as would normally be the case. If any examples of the engineering department's request exist within the Powell River city limits, please share those details with me. Other than that, I believe that the two other servicing issues that the engineering department is demanding are also unreasonable requests, as neighboring properties exist with a much less elaborate infrastructure in place than what is expected. For what it's worth, I was led to believe from the realtor that sold me the property that a variance application would be a simple undertaking, since the requests made by engineering were apparently somewhat generic, in the realtor's words, and pertain to much larger developments. Again, I'm not creating a full-on subdivision here, just attempting to service a fifth of an acre lot to build a small retirement cottage for myself. I've brought a professional in the plumbing business with me in case anybody has questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any additional public input? Do you have anybody online? Okay. Now move to the consent agenda. Councillor Isaacson.
I'll move adoption of the May 8th, 2025 consent agenda.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. I'll move to 11, which is legislative matters, and 11.1 is proposed bylaw 2752-2025, the 2025 property tax rate.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The discussions and deliberations for the property tax rates bylaw before you did start in December 2024. And just for background, the previous report, when the bylaw was at 3 readings, contains links to all of the discussions on the financial plan bylaw and the property tax rate bylaw. So at this point in the process, we keep it quite brief, but that is the easiest way to access all of the history and the discussions and deliberation that have occurred thus far. To summarize the property tax, the average single-family dwelling would have an increase of $322 in municipal property taxes and user fees, and that is 8.6% increase. For the other authorities, which includes the 5 other taxing authorities, that is an increase of $64 for an average single-family dwelling, which is a 3.9% increase. And of course, we put this in terms of average single-family dwelling because depending on where one's property assessment has gone to increase or decrease, especially how it compares to the average, will therefore determine what their increase is. So what the city has launched a number of years ago is a property tax rate calculator. And so that can be found online on the city's website, and you're able to put your current year assessment in and your prior year assessment, and that calculator will show you how your assessment change compares to the average assessment change, what your each municipal fee and tax will be, and as well as the taxes for the other authorities. So it's a little bit of an like a dynamic interactive tool that people can use to estimate their residential property taxes. So just wanted to point out that tool to help individuals who are looking to get an estimate of what their property taxes would be if this bylaw that is proposed is adopted. Very
Thank you.
briefly for next steps, I'll just say we'll be mailing out the property taxes after this is adopted. So that's all that I have on my end for next steps in the process. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Hi, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted a quick question. So the online estimator has calculations of sewer and water and so forth based on frontage. Is that frontage for an average, or does it change with it doesn't have an address, so it wouldn't know exactly what each person's frontage is. So that may be different each than reality. Is that right?
Through the chair, that's correct. It uses an average frontage because we wouldn't have on your property tax notice the we haven't built it to calculate based on the actual foot. And so on the calculator, you will see that disclaimer that an average frontage has been used. And so that's where we talk about this giving you an estimate for your tax bill. If your frontage is larger than the estimate, this bill will be a little bit lower than what your actual cost will be, and vice versa. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to follow up on the question that we had from the public at the beginning of the meeting. The public to be aware of the percentage of taxes for each jurisdiction. Because I think I'm still guessing, and I don't know if they are or not, but from what I heard, Ms. Dennison, the city taxes are going up 8.6%, which was $322. Is it the RD taxes you referred to going up 3.9 for $64?
Through the chair, that is the total increase for all of the 5 other taxing authorities. The Cathett Regional District went up $47, which is 9.2%. And the remainder of the other 4 taxing authorities went up very, very nominally.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you,
You're
Worship.
welcome.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Councillor Isaacs.
Yeah, I move that City of Powell River 2025 property tax rates bylaw number 2752, 2025 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Almeida. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to 11.2, which is proposed bylaw 2562, 2024, modular mobile home differentiation. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Well, if there was no questions, I would just read the motion.
Please.
I move that the City of Powell River Sustainable Official Community Plan Bylaw 2370 2014 Amendment Bylaw 2562 2024 be adopted.
Southcott, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to 11.3, which is proposed bylaw 2563 2024. Modular mobile home differentiation. Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you. And just to clarify for folks in the audience, there's 3 different amendments here, one for the Sustainable Official Community Plan, one for the zoning bylaw, and one for the building bylaw that all have to be updated to differentiate between modular and mobile homes. So this one, I move that City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100-2006, amendment bylaw 2563-2024 be adopted.
By Councillor Southcott. Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So prior to these revisions, our bylaws tended to use loose language around modular and mobile homes and didn't really differentiate between the two. And so this clears up all the language, so it clearly defines what they are and explains why they're different and where they're allowed or not allowed. So I just thought I would explain that in case people are wondering why we're whipping through this. We've been on this one for a while.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll go to 11.4, which is the proposed bylaw 2564 2024. This is the modular mobile home differentiation.
move that the City of Powell River Building Bylaw 2141 2007 Amendment Bylaw 2564 2024 be adopted.
Councillor Southcott, any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. 11.5, which is the Development Variance Permit 284, Berwick, Hodlington, Lot 4, Cranberry Street.
Good evening, Council. So the purpose of the report before you is to present a development variance permit application that proposes to vary servicing requirements as established by bylaw to facilitate the development of a detached residential home on Lot 4. Once it's up on the screen, we can see where we're looking at. Moving to what is Appendix B in your staff report. Is a property that's located, as I said, on Cranberry Street. It's in the vicinity of Lindsay Park, for those of you that maybe need a little bit more to understand what we're talking about. And I'm going to state at the outset of this presentation that this is, a report that was prepared by Planning Services. And I am here as the Director of Planning Services presenting it to you, but I want to make sure that you understand this is one that actually required a lot of input from our engineering team. And tonight I do have here with me Mr. Oswaldini, who's here to support some of the technical recommendations that came forward as part of this assessment. So the owner is seeking a variance that would absolve them from having to provide to install new sanitary, water, and storm service water connections and associated upgrades. The owner is instead proposing that required services be tied into city infrastructure on the street. While a building permit application has not been submitted to the city, achieving surety with respect to the works and services that would be required on the subject property will provide the applicant with clarity around the feasibility of moving forward with planned development. The property is zoned R2, and that is the city's single and two-family zone, single and two-family residential zone. In the official community plan, it has a land use designation of suburban residential. And as I said earlier, the subject property fronts onto Cranberry Street, and it is a vacant, undeveloped property. Related to the variance for sanitary servicing requirements, the owner is seeking a variance that would permit them to tie in a new sanitary service connection to the city's sanitary service system without paying for the required service connection. The only way to avoid this cost would be if the property already had service connections. And sometimes this is the case when a property is being redeveloped. There are existing services that can be reused. However, engineering services staff indicate that there are no records of any services being provided to this undeveloped lot. The absence of any services on the property mean that the sanitary service tie-in would not be possible unless new services are paid for and provided at the owner's expense. Moving on to the second variance, which is being sought to permit the tie water service directly into the city's trunk main on Cranberry Street and forego the installation of a new fire hydrant. Engineering services staff are generally not supportive of tying water services into trunk mains due to the potential for increased vulnerability and disruptions to the broader network, which could have runoff effects on water quality and distribution. And secondly, the city is requiring a new fire hydrant as the existing hydrant that serves this part of the community does not meet current standards. The final variance requested relates to the requirement to provide a stormwater connection for the purposes of collecting and conveying stormwater runoff. It should be pointed out that the applicant can design and install on-site stormwater management facilities as an alternative. So in summary, staff are not supportive of any of the requested variances recommended. And the recommendation is that council deny the application. Now, recognizing that council may wish to consider some of the variances requested, option 2 was included in the report, and this is an option that has the language that could get council across the finish line if you so chose. We've also included a draft development variance permit just for your consideration and review as part of this process. As I mentioned earlier, I do have my colleague from Engineering Services here with me to answer any questions that you should have. But that completes my presentation, and I'm here for questions, as is Mr. Oswaldini.
Councillor Isaacson and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I have a question about the fire hydrant and about the existing one not meeting current standards. My understanding is that a fire hydrant serves multiple homes in a region, and so I'm wondering why the expectation would be on the owner in the fire hydrant scenario. Is that an existing policy, or is it standard practice if to replace a fire hydrant at the cost of the owner in cases like these?
Through the chair to Councillor Isaacson. I'm going to actually call on my engineering services staff member if that pleases council. I'm great. He's on his way. Perfect.
Mayor, Council, through the chair, the hydrant requirement would have been the case for any size development that would have triggered bylaw 2225, which is the case for even a single family home as long as it's over $75,000 to construct.
Councillor Elliott and Southcott and Palm.
Okay, my question is about the hydrant as well. I didn't quite understand what you said about timed versus when you were talking about the hydrant, you said there was an alternative that was being proposed, and I didn't quite understand that.
Through the chair, you're talking to me, Councillor Elliott.
I think so. You were talking about, and I didn't quite catch what you said, and I don't know where to read it in the.
Sure. So it's actually in relationship to the third variance being requested, and it's related to stormwater. And so stormwater can be accommodated through on-site stormwater management.
No, that wasn't it. I knew that part.
Okay.
We headwaters, we did that.
Sure.
It was to do with the fire hydrant. When you talked about the hydrant, you said something I didn't understand, and I don't remember it well enough to. Could you repeat the part about the fire hydrant?
Absolutely. So in reference to the second variance being requested, it's first to tie the service connection directly into the trunk main. And engineering services does not support that. The second bit was the ability to vary the requirement for the hydrant, but I am not seeing an alternative suggestion here.
Thank you.
Southcott. Thank you, Worship. Same issue or same basic question here. Not the same question, but can you speak to what is common practice throughout the community when it comes to mains that are secondary to big trunk mains like that 16-inch one that goes all the way to Wildwood, essentially, and that goes along Cranberry? My impression is that secondary mains are necessary so that distribution can be made from that. Now, in this case, it would essentially just be one, but are there valves involved or other reasons to do that other than tapping straight into the big main? Like, I realize that's a high pressure main and you don't want to mess with it any more than necessary.
Again, I'm going to call on my engineering colleague if that pleases council.
Through the chair, that is correct. We do look at having smaller secondary mains when there are trunk mains on the street. In this case, there isn't a secondary main, which is where the requirement comes from. There's other developments that we're fronting two mains, and generally they do connect to the smaller size to allow for the distribution.
Would there be valves involved, like to shut off an area? I've been witness to various main breakages, through the community over the years, and am aware that having a valve where you can shut off one area is preferable to shutting the whole town down.
Through the chair, that's correct. There would be valving.
Thank you. Councillor Pong.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. First question, with the diagram that we have on screen here in the yellow line, why does it extend out into the middle of Cranberry Street?
Cranberry.
That's through the chair to Councillor Palm. So this is a great example and not unique. Lots of our community, unfortunately, has these situations where we have public road built over private property. Luckily, we do have protections through Section 42 of the Transportation Act that say if a municipality has invested in a public road, their configuration can remain there. So it's not a great situation, but it is the reality of dealing with properties that were created many, many years ago when perhaps things weren't as precise as they are today. We don't do that today. How about that?
That clarification. My second question is, I'm kind of sitting here looking at both options. Option one, where we're denying the application. Option two, we're suggesting that the developer could tie into existing infrastructure and bypass the new fire hydrant part of the development. I want to ask engineering, if this was adopted by council, would it create any serious safety issues or other damages or implications for our systems that are currently exist?
Through the chair, it isn't ideal and it wouldn't be best practices to adopt it. It wouldn't impart any immediate dangers that I'm aware of. It has been in service and functioning for quite some time. It is an older hydrant that's there. What it's missing is a pumper port with the Storts fitting. So as far as volume of water that it could put out, it would not provide as much water as a new hydrant would, if that answers the question.
So my last question is, how far is the current existing hydrant from this property?
I believe it's just outside of the frame on that photo to the right-hand side.
So it's on the road within seeing distance?
Yeah. Through the chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So that's kind of perplexing. This gentleman wants to build a house, which we have a great shortage of in our community. And he's not really happy with having to put in all this infrastructure and the expenses that are going to be asked for. Well, I'm kind of, because option two is on the page here, I'm kind of leaning towards option two to allow this development to take place. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. So I had a chance to talk with the Premier about a year and a half ago, and he had made an announcement about the importance of housing in the province and that he was going to bring forward initiatives that would essentially cut some red tape and make housing more affordable. When I look at this, my question would be, what would be the increased tax revenue that the city would receive if there was a medium-sized building on that over the next 5 years?
To you, yourself, Your Worship, I would lean on my colleague, the CFO, to speak to a question of that nature. And I'm not quite sure Ms. Tennyson would have an answer for you, but it's a bit more than I have prepared right now.
Through the chair, it would absolutely depend on the value of the property. To estimate a $300,000 property, it would be an extra $2,600 to the city annually.
Thank you very much. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So I see option one is to deny the application and option two is to approve everything in the application, which is problematic because it doesn't provide the proper connections that we need for water, sewer, and things like that. And that doesn't just affect the property being developed, but everything beyond it when we get down the road. And so there's really good reasons why we have it set up this way. The fire hydrant is still a bit confusing to me. Is it a new fire hydrant or is it a fire hydrant that is under capacity?
Through the chair, I think I can answer this. What's being proposed is a new fire hydrant. And the fire hydrant, again, please jump in if I'm getting this incorrect. It is largely to serve what they refer to as a dead end. So the water system that's being proposed would be a 150 mil pipe with a dead end, and you need a way to blow out the dead end of that smaller pipe. So there's other ways to do that, and perhaps there's a way that could meet some of the applicants' desires in terms of reduced costs, but would still give the city the ability to clean that dead end line. The hydrant was proposed as per bylaw.
Mhm.
If you're referring to the previous or the existing hydrant, it's an older hydrant. So this is an opportunity for the city to see an improvement in terms of fire suppression in this particular part of our community.
Yeah, my question, I guess, was I was trying to get clear on whether this is a brand new hydrant or replacing an old hydrant, or both.
Through the chair, I will ask Mr. Oswaldini whether or not, because I think what you're getting at is, would the existing hydrant be removed?
Yes.
Through the chair, the existing hydrant would be removed in favor of the new storage pumper hydrant.
So that begs the next question. Do we in the city have a strategy plan or capital management plan that replaces old hydrants without it being attached to developments, or is it always attached to developments?
Through the chair, I would say that there is not a program like that. Most of the time where we see upgrades, it is at the cost of new development.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. With respect to the new hydrant, I'm familiar with this area. There are 2 hydrants in the vicinity, like the new one that would go at the end of this secondary main, but they're both about a block away. One is up by Marlette, and the other one is about halfway to Tatlow Street along that strip of Cranberry Street. So a new hydrant there would serve that whole neighborhood. There's no question about it at all. And obviously it would do what you're saying. It would provide the ability to vent the secondary main. So my question is, so that would be necessary and obviously an opportunity. But my question is, if even if that wasn't the case with the hydrant, would it still be the recommendation of staff to put in that secondary main to service this particular lot?
Through the chair, that is correct. Again, the idea that the city does not support tying directly into a larger trunk main.
So basically, the new hydrant would be an opportunity, and also it would serve that secondary main as well, if I understand correctly.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, I think with increased costs, arguably the fire hydrant is quite a bit more expensive than other methods of blowing off the dead end.
So just one more question, if I may. Into the same question, basically. I understand this to be common and past practice and accepted practice. I'm also aware where in previous situations, we've been approached by builders or residents to vary our bylaws. And I've been aware of one of the risks of that being that if we start it for one person, why wouldn't we do it for everybody else? And I'm very wary of then having to justify why we're not going to do it down the road in light of that there's very good reason to do it now. I don't know if you can comment on that, but precedent has been pretty significant in some of our decisions. Maybe that's an argument I'm making for the option 1 in the report.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, I think the one point I would make, and I regularly say this to this group, is there's a difference between a staff recommendation and a council decision, and I recognize that. I appreciate that. Our job is here to tell you what the bylaws say and make recommendations based on those bylaws. your job essentially is to take that, but also measure that against, and I've heard some people talk about, you haven't used the word equity, but you definitely are getting to that point, and I don't disagree with you.
Okay, question. Okay, I'll hold my question until Councilor Armida.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the fire hydrant, you mentioned that there is no existing policy for replacement across the city. If a development were not to happen at this property, would anything change with the fire hydrant, or would we need to replace this fire hydrant in 5 to 10 years? And also, can you refer to a recent 5 to 10 year old development where a fire hydrant had to be done as part of the process? Just, I as Councillor Southcott says, I don't want to set a precedent that might backfire down the road.
To the chair, I'm going to lean on my colleague here again to talk about potentially a more recent development where we can talk about a new fire hydrant being installed. I think a big piece of this is scale. It's an easier conversation when we're talking about a much bigger development. This one is, I think, and it shows the holes in the bylaw, if you will. But perhaps Mr. Oswaldini can also speak about the length of time that a fire hydrant, the existing fire hydrant, might stay, knowing that it's more deficient, not necessarily ineffective, but more deficient than what our current standard is.
So through the chair, the fire hydrant, there is a fire hydrant maintenance program. What I'm not sure of is how it's implemented and whether or not it is strictly for maintenance or if there is an ongoing hydrant replacement as part of it. So for that side of it, the answer is I don't know what the frequency is for replacement. For what we're looking at here, when we're weighing anything that applies to bylaw 2225, we take a look at the property and what's fronting it and what's serving it and whether or not those items meet the bylaw. In this case, the existing hydrant does not meet the bylaw. It does not have the storage pump report. It wouldn't provide the water that the current bylaw would prescribe, which is why it was drawn up as being part of the works and services. So for this development here, it wasn't age or the use case of it being inoperable that it's being replaced. It is strictly for it not meeting the bylaw. I hope that answers a few of the questions on why it is on the list.
Thank you. And just a follow up there, just for clarity, Councillor Elliott made a reference to this. Option 2 that you've listed, is that option 1 is nothing to deny. Option 2, is that proving with none of the requirements, or is there a middle ground that we can say, well, maybe we'll be flexible on the fire hydrant and the sidewalk, but some other things like, yeah.
Through the chair, to Councillor Almeida, I think option 2 gives us the language should we wish to move in that direction. It's clearly laid out, and so we could just look through and see if there was a motion a member of council wanted to make that looked at perhaps waiving some but keeping others. The one point I would make is that the request to vary the sanitary service connections is simply just waiving fees.
Councillor Doubt.
I've just got a question, and it's all about the subdivision of the property, because a lot of times we see requests for subdivisions that come along with a bunch of requirements for service provision along roads, sidewalks, etc. And I'm assuming that when this piece of property was subdivided, I don't know when that is, that there was a different bylaw in place than is in place now. Am I correct in that?
Through the chair, you are correct.
So, and my assumption being that if that's the case, at current, if we're trying to subdivide a piece of property today, all the requirements that you're talking about that are in the bylaw would be required for that subdivision.
Through the chair to Councillor Dow, there is language in the bylaw that gives some discretion to the manager of engineering to look at the local standard, looking around And again, saying, does it make sense to include sidewalk in the vicinity like this if it's a one-off? So there is some discretion there, but.
Councillor Early.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my question is whether there's time sensitivity on this particular thing. I wouldn't mind giving it some thought and have time to formulate maybe an alternative to what's here, where we do a thoughtful maybe exclusion of a fire hydrant, but not the other things. And I'd prefer to do that with a bit of time. And so my preference would be to maybe, I'm wondering if there's time sensitivity with this one, or if we could wait 2 weeks.
Through the chair, perhaps the applicant, Mr. Pocklington. The applicant says he's fine with waiting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you. I do have another question, but this is pertinent to the storm part of this report. The city's base map shows 2 catchment basins. This Appendix B graphic shows essentially just one. One of them is up on the, actually farther up onto the property. If I read the base map correctly, and the other one is down right near the road. Now, the one near the road is, you can see it right beside the road. The requirement in the city's requirement of the property owner is to put a statutory right-of-way over all of that infrastructure. The report's a little bit thin. There was a requirement for a viewing port as well. I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit more. Like, what is it you actually want for storm? Now, obviously, this is a property that has its own private watershed, essentially, of about I don't know, 600 feet of mountain right behind it. So stormwater is likely to be really critical necessity here. And the rest of the neighborhood does have stormwater as well. It is established here, but what is it that you want to add aside from the statutory right-of-way over what exists? The catchment basin that's up on the property isn't really visible right now because it's covered with blackberries. Unless you want to stomp through the blackberries, which I did not do when I went up to have a look.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, I am again going to lean on my colleague.
Thank you.
Through the chair, what we're looking for is a statutory right-of-way to cover the physical infrastructure that is on the property. As you can see, the triangular portion does come out onto the road, so there is some city infrastructure that's within it, the storm infrastructure being some of it. So for the city to be able to access, maintain, and operate the infrastructure that's in place, that's what the statutory right-of-way is looking to cover.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to propose, we can do it formally if motion of council would like, that this item be brought back in 2 weeks to the next council meeting. And personally, I would be in favor of the option 2, which our acting CAO put forward, and would hope that in the next 2 weeks that option could be worked out.
I'm in favor of your motion if that's what you're to postpone.
Councillor Doubt.
Just want to be clear. You started out with the suggestion that we bring this back to council in 2 weeks, and the report has 2 options in it. But then you added a choice to accept option 2. Is that your actual motion, or do you want to bring it back in 2 weeks? Or do you want to bring it back in 2 weeks with the instruction to accept option 2?
Bring it back in 2 weeks so we can direct staff through a motion as to how we would like to proceed as a council.
Yeah, that's what I would approve of.
I think that motion's been seconded, right? I think if when this comes back to council, I would be interested in seeing a third option that remove the requirement for the fire hydrant. Seeing that there might be an interest of council of doing something in between, making sure that we have the right language to be able to do that. That would be my personal interest, but I do support moving it ahead or deferring it for 2 weeks.
Any further discussion? Councillor Southcott.
And thank you, Your Worship. So since we're really tearing this apart, I do support the idea of the secondary main. I would be interested in the possibility of an option that the city pay for the hydrant itself and the landowner pay for the main that is going to serve their property, if that would be possible.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. I'll move to 11.6, which is Development Variance Permit 286 BC Wildfire Service, Powell River Fire Zone Lease Area.
Good evening again, Council. So the purpose of this report is to present a development variance permit application that proposes to alter the minimum building setback requirement to facilitate the installation of a triple wide trailer in the BC Wildfire Service lease area. We're talking about an area of land in around the airport on Empress Way. And so just to give you a little bit of background on this development, in 2023, the BC Wildfire Service secured a new lease area adjacent to its current fire base at 7400 Empress Way, with the stated intention of expanding its operations to include a new crew facility and parking area. As part of planned expansion, a development variance permit application was submitted by the Wildfire Service to relax side setback requirements of their new lease area to accommodate the placement of that triple wide trailer. The permit and the associated development permit were issued shortly thereafter. And since that time, the applicant's plans have changed, and now they are proposing a development that includes 3 new sets of stairs as part of the design. And so based on the drawings submitted to the Planning Services Department, one of the proposed stairs will project beyond the setback and across the property boundary, meaning if built, the stairs will encroach onto the adjacent lot at 7400 Empress Way, also leased by the Wildfire Service. A couple of challenging variances tonight. Considering the applicant's desire to construct a set of stairs that will not only project into the existing side setback, but will also encroach onto the adjacent lot, Council is being asked to consider relaxation of the side setback requirement for both affected lots. More specifically, the variance being sought is to permit a 0 lot line setback along the shared lease boundary to permit the construction of the proposed stairs. Staff support the variance request, but recommend the registration of a Section 219 covenant on title of both lease areas that would require the Wildfire Service to remove all structures and encumbrances from any setback area should the Wildfire Service dispose of either lease. And this would ensure that any future leaseholder would not be impacted by the encroachment proposed by this application should Council wish to grant approval. So you have a recommendation before you. I, again, am here for any questions.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question that came to mind when I read through this was I was partly surprised that there were stairs involved, as I missed that part if there was mentioned in the past. But after some presentations from other members of our community and other involvement and other things, the first thought that came to my mind is if there's stairs, does there not also need to be a ramp? Is that not a requirement of building code? I have a feeling I might know what the answer to that is, but I figured I'd put it out there.
Through the chair. So my understanding is there would need to be an accessible access point in the building, but not necessarily that all access points would need to be accessible. That I would have to verify, but that's my understanding of code.
The assumption then would be that while those stairs are there, there would be some sort of accessible place between the two buildings.
Again, I would want to confirm with my colleague, the chief building inspector, to ensure that that's correct, but that is my understanding.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm assuming, because these are all firefighters, that they thought about the implications of having the alleyway blocked for firefighting purposes. Have our firefighters weighed in on this, or is there anybody who said whether that's going to be an impediment to fighting fire should any of the buildings catch fire?
Through the chair, to Councillor Elliott, yes, this was referred out to all departments, and we didn't hear anything back from fire service team.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Your Worship, to the chair, I'm going to read the recommendation and put it on the floor for further discussion. I'm a supporter of our wildfire service, and this is a staff recommendation. So I will move that council approve for issuance development variance permit 286 that varies City of Powell River zoning bylaw 2100/2006 by relaxing the minimum side setback requirement to 0 meters along the shared interior lease boundary and on land legally described as leasehold area plan EPP 114505 in blocks F and J district lot 5118 and blocks A and C district lot 5119 group 1 New Westminster district to facilitate the construction of a set of stairs as part of the planned installation of a new modular building within the BC Wildfire Service lease area, subject to registration of a Section 219 covenant on title for both lease areas that require BC Wildfire Service to remove all structures and encumbrances from any setback area should BC Wildfire Service dispose of either lease.
Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Yes, Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe one double jointed question. Overall, I'm in favor of this. I just, again, want to make sure we're not setting the incorrect precedent. So I'm curious, for one, without fully knowing the answer regarding accessibility, I'd hate to approve this and then realize that something was missed in the process. And I'm wondering if there's a way to give conditional approval based on the fact that accessibility has been checkmarked appropriately. And the second question is regarding, because this is encroaching on the neighborhood and property, I assume that's the Ocean View helicopter property, or am I? Oh, okay, then never mind the second question. So first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Almeida, your question about conditional approval, I'm just trying to clarify for myself, or perhaps I want to make it clear that the building team hasn't reviewed this project, not at least thoroughly at this point. So if the concern is that it's been given a stamp of approval that it will allow it to move forward without meeting the accessibility requirements of code, that is not where we're at. This is I don't want to say an early stage, because as you've seen, we've already had a number of applications here, but the chief building inspector and his team haven't had an opportunity to review this in detail. They do get referred out, and it wasn't flagged by the chief building inspector as a concern. So I'm hopeful that that means there isn't a requirement to have a ramp in this location. But I would, if your concern is that this is giving it a stamp of approval that council's a little concerned about doing, I would assure you that we still have a secondary process internally.
Okay, we have Isaacson.
Thank you. Just for maybe Councillor Almeida's assurance, this is a development variance permit, and so really we're talking about setbacks today and allowing the variance for a 0 meter setback gives them the possibility to apply for other things and for things to be final. Do I have that correct? Like we're just focusing on the setback today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I think Councillor Isaacson expressed what I was going to say, and that is that we're varying the setback, not the accessibility provisions at all with this variance permit. If there are accessibility requirements, they still exist, and our variance won't change that.
you have a motion? No other discussions? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next is 11.7, which is a development variance permit 289 Harwood Estates, 6900 Burnaby Street.
The purpose of this report is to present a development variance permit application that proposes to vary requirements for works and services already constructed related to a multi-unit residential development located at 6900 Burnaby Street. On the screen, you can see the locator where we're talking about. Zoomed in, we're looking at a property between Michigan and Harvey on Burnaby. Actually, Michigan and Harwood would be a better description. Some of you may be familiar with this development. We've seen it a number of times over the last number of years. It is getting closer to completion, which is great news for our community. But just to touch on the background, the 3 multi-unit residential buildings at 6900 Burnaby were built as a phase strata development over the last 3 decades. Phase 1, which is the building adjacent to Burnaby, was registered at land titles on November 7th, 1995. And then many years later, Phase 2 and Phase 3 went forward in 2021 and 2025, respectively. Final occupancy for Phase 3 is being withheld until all project requirements are met. And one area that requires approval from council before occupancy can be granted is related to some of the works and services required as per Bylaw 225, or the city's infrastructure design and construction bylaw. Linked to issuance of building permits for Phase 2 and 3, specific works and services were required to be installed. So as the project approached completion, a review of the works and services installed uncovered deficiencies between what was approved on the civil drawings and what was built. Prior to occupancy being granted, the developer must achieve a variance approved by council or rebuild those deficient works and services to accurately reflect the approved engineered civil drawings. And the developer has opted to seek a variance to relax the required sidewalk width from 1.65 meters to 1.5 meters, and the requirement to provide a minimum 1 meter clear space around a fire hydrant by allowing a gate within this clear space minimum. I will point out again, this is another report where Planning Services prepares it. I present it, but leaned heavily on engineering, in this case, our fire services team as well, as I learned a lot about hydrants through this process. For the variance related to the sidewalk, as was indicated on the engineered civil drawing submission and in keeping with Bylaw 2225, city staff approved the proposed 1.65 meter wide sidewalk. The developer incorrectly built a 1.5 meter wide sidewalk. And so while not ideal, the difference of 15 centimeters in width on a segment of sidewalk that serves only a short section of road with an expected low volume of pedestrian traffic seems supportable, and staff are in favor of council granting approval for this requested variance. As for the variance related to the required clear space around a fire hydrant, MMCD standards, and that's the Master Municipal Construction Document, require that a minimum 1 meter clear space is required around a hydrant. And this is so when the hydrant is in operation, there's enough space to swing a large tool that opens up the hydrant. You need that 1 meter clear space to not impact the ability to open the hydrant. The developer has installed a hydrant with limited clearance around it due to the adjacent fencing. So rather than remove the fencing within the required clear space minimum, the developer has proposed to install swinging gates that can be opened to create the required 1 meter separation from the hydrant. This alternative solution is supported by the city's fire chief and staff support council granting approval for this requested variance. The recommended option in the report represents what the applicant has applied for, and it would require no modifications to the existing works and services provided by the developer. And so that completes my presentation. Again, I'm here, and I do have Mr. Oswaldini, should you have some more technical questions.
Just got a couple of quick questions. First, on the sidewalk. Do we not have a building inspector that comes around and inspects the forms before the concrete is poured?
Through the chair, not for a project of this scale, and typically it wouldn't be the building inspector inspecting sidewalks. Yes, this is a project where there's a consulting engineer on file. They have agents that do inspections.
Okay, I was under the impression maybe the building inspector would go by before the concrete's poured and maybe put a tape measure on there and see if they're the right size, but that doesn't happen. Okay, the second question was, there's a picture of the fire hydrant in our package. There it looks like the fence is built right up to the fire hydrant and there doesn't seem to be any space. That's not, the gate isn't in place yet. They're talking about replacing it with that with a gate of some kind, and I'm assuming it would open towards the sidewalk.
Through the chairs to Councillor Dowd, what I can say is I'm guilty of a little bit of what I refer to as desktop planning. And so this is an image from Google. I thought it did justice and I didn't run out to see whether this is exactly what it looks like today. This is from 2024. So it may have been before these deficiencies were noticed. And so the image might be quite different. But my understanding is it still looks very much like a fence, but the fence pops out. But Mr. Oswaldini is much more familiar with having done on-site inspections. So if you would like a clear answer, maybe Mr. Oswaldini will come up and...
I would like a clear answer,
Through the chair, what's existing the last time I was on site was the top quarter, I would say, of the fence panel was removable. So it wasn't a gate as referenced in the report here. From what I'm reading in the report, I'm reading that there will be a gate installed as opposed to the piece of the fence that was removable. And just to give a bit more reference to why it was built removable as opposed to a gate. The intent from the developer was that the valve stem on the hydrant was level with the top, let's call it 1 foot of the fencing. So if you could imagine taking a saw and cutting off the top foot of the fence and then putting a piece back on so that when the fire department shows up, you can remove the top piece, spin the wrench, and then once they're done, put the piece of fencing back. But again, with the way that the report is written, I'm expecting a gate as what's on the report.
That's where my question was going. When I look at it, just so people know, you're not looking at the pictures I'm looking at on the big screen. My picture is from the sidewalk, shows the fire hydrant and a fence, and the fence has got like the top 6-inch cut off because there's a valve. There's a twist valve on the top of the fire hydrant. You put a wrench on that, and in the picture I have in front of me, it looks as if there might be room to swing a wrench around, but it doesn't, to me, look like as much room I'd want to have if I was trying to attach hoses to the fire hydrant. I'd want a meter clear on each side of the fire hydrant to do that work, and a simple way to address it and to get in there, like a gate that swings open. Although I even have some concerns with the swinging gate, because you want to be able to attach the hoses to that fire hydrant as fast as you can, because there could be lives hanging in the balance.
Clearly.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think that this fire hydrant's a bigger issue than it seems, because the property owners will treat the inside of that fence as their own and will create obstructions that could be hazardous during a fire. And so I am wondering if anyone's talked to the property owners about there also needs to be a requirement that there's no obstructions on either side of that fence within the right of way, like the area. And that's usually why we require it to be clear and not have a fence. The purpose of a fence is to delineate the area that the property owner can use. And I don't think they can use it. I think they have to not use that property. So That's my concern, and I'm wondering if someone can give me a reason why they shouldn't build a fence that does not go that close to the fire hydrant.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I will say that, again, back to my statement about a joint effort, this was a conversation directly with the fire department, and they were satisfied that the solution, the swinging gate, and I will point out that the swinging gate comment that I built the report around is what's referenced in the consulting engineer's report. And so if my expectation is that there will be a change to what's shown here to create that clear space. I think your point about the concern around how the owners of that property use the area that they understand to be theirs is a bigger point. And I can't answer that. I'm not the fire chief, but the fire chief did provide his satisfaction that what is being proposed would suffice. But again, this is a question of council and your willingness to accept it.
I'm just wondering if anybody from the city has talked to the folks who own that unit, and because what if they decide to put a trampoline there or whatever, right? Then who cares if the fence opens if you can't open it?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott. So one of the things that still needs to be
For a swimming pool?
One of the things that still needs to be addressed as part of this process is the statutory right-of-way and the current delineation of it. The statutory right-of-way does not accurately reflect the infrastructure. It's actually a little unique because the statutory right-of-way is actually much bigger than what was originally proposed, in part because, again, of another error that was created early on. The building is actually a meter closer to the road than was initially anticipated. And this has created this situation that we have here. So the city actually does have the rights to much of that patio space. So from our position, we're not concerned about if council said, no, we're not going to accept this variance as proposed, the city would have the ability to create some form of delineation, 1 meter delineation. So really, this is a question for council. I assure you, we have that power if we need it. We're asking you, will you approve the variance as proposed?
Councillor Pong.
Thank you, Worship. To the chair, I am going to read the recommendation for further discussion, but I just want to say, first of all, I want to compliment the developer for providing more housing in our city. This is a long time coming, and I'm glad to see they're getting close to completion. And secondly, I want to compliment staff for noticing these little problems and addressing them and coming up with a solution that meets everybody's expectations. And I thank you for your fine work. So I will recommend that the city approve the issuance development variance permit 289 that varies City of Powell River infrastructure design and construction bylaw 2225 2009 by relaxing the required sidewalk width from 1.65 meters to 1.5 meters and the requirement to provide a minimum 1 meter clear space around the fire hydrant by allowing a gate within this clear space minimum on land legally described as statutory right-of-way plan EPP 115749 of District Lot 5306 to facilitate the issuance of an occupancy permit for the third phase of a multi-unit residential development at 6900 Burnaby Street.
Councillor Almeida. Councillor Elliott.
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion to strike out the part that refers to the 1 meter space around the fire hydrant so that we're just, it would refer only to the sidewalk. If I get a seconder, I'll speak to it. So I would prefer that we not approve fences in the area that the firefighters need to work, particularly in such small yards, because I think the chances of the homeowner utilizing that space in an obstructive way is really, really high, and it could cost someone their life. And so my preference would be to change the fence and delineate the appropriate amount of space around the, and I think that's just to, rebuild the fence so that there's the proper amount of space there. I'm okay with the sidewalk, but I don't like this variance for leaving the fence within the 1 meter clearance of the fire hydrant.
I have a chance to speak yet, so I think we've heard from our fire chief. We've heard from others that support the recommendation put forward, so I will not support the amendment to the motion. So Southcott.
And just a question, if this amendment was to be supported, did engineering or the fire department have another idea as to how to accommodate the requirement or for a meter clearance for the fire hydrant? An alternative to the gate as it was suggested in the report.
Through the chair, to clarify, if it is supported, if there's something else that could be put in place for the fence, is that?
Yeah, if it clearly the need is that the hydrant needs space. I would think actually that if there was a firefighters have access, the fence probably wouldn't be there for long. It's in the way. But that being said, is there an alternative to the gate? Was there any thought? I'm just thinking we're kind of making a mountain out of a molehill here, but.
Through the chair, I believe the alternative to the gate would be removal of the gate completely, not having it there, possibly moving the fence back further into the property, which would be, I suppose that would be up to the developer as to what their next proposed action would be on it.
Councillor Doubt and Councillor Almeida.
Oh, I don't see a gate in the picture. I see a trimmed fence. I think the simple logical solution is if we say we don't remove the requirement for a meter clear space, would be to clear that meter of space on each side of the fire hydrant, which is to remove the existing fence. And as for how important that is, if my grandchildren were in the unit that was on fire, I wouldn't want to say, well, we'll just wait while the firemen clear that out. It only may take a few minutes or 10 minutes. I would rather they be able to get at the fire hydrant. So I would support this amendment. And the logical thing that I would do if I was the building owner would be to take my chainsaw out there and cut a meter out of that fence. It's not a hard thing to do.
So Almeida.
Might have confused myself with my own question, but I guess if we were to follow this proposed amendment, and as per Councillor Doubt's suggested, maybe even remove that section of fence. In my head at first, I was thinking of that 1 meter and pushing the fence back, but I guess the property could just go without a section of fence as an option for them too, and just leave that property exposed. That would be up, because it doesn't look like there's much space between the fence and the building anyways. I'm guessing it looks like it's only about 2 meters between the fence and the building. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm not sure what would be. I feel like based on the questions that I'm hearing and the concerns, there's not enough information. It could be that if we had pictures of the solution, we would be very happy with it, given that the fire chief is happy, but there's a number of councillors who have expressed hesitation. Would this be, do you think that we would be able to get, like if we deferred this for 2 weeks, would we get, a physical picture or enough information to rather than deny this, possibly approve it if we just had a bit more information and pictures of what we're looking at, and what the solution is and why it works and why things wouldn't be blocked and behind. Like, there's a lot of outstanding questions that I have. I would hate to deny half of this permit when if we just had a little bit more information, we could approve the entire variance. And so that's I'm just unclear how much more information we'd be able to get. And so through the chair to staff, I'm wondering, like you mentioned the consulting engineer's report. Yeah, I'm wondering if you think that council's questions and concerns could be answered if we got a bit of an update in 2 weeks.
Through the chair to Councillor Isaacson, I think I'm going to start by just pointing out that option 2 in the report is actually the option that speaks to not denying the variance as it relates to the clear space. I think that option would be your ability to move forward with that tonight, which give the developer the responsibility of coming back with this proposed solution. As I mentioned earlier, the city does hold a statutory right-of-way. We have not amended that, so we do have some power when it comes to what is going to be built on that statutory right-of-way. Effectively, the MMCD standards just says 1 meter of clear space separation. And I'm not suggesting that the concerns about how people use that space should be alleviated for years to come, but I am suggesting that through the process of redelineating the statutory right-of-way, we would have the option to create our own solution or make the developer adhere to a solution that we are keen to do and not do it so much as part of a variance process. Does that make sense? Because the variance is really, are they meeting the 1 meter separation or not? That's what they're asking for, is to avoid that with the use of this swinging gate. And so you could deny that tonight. The variance in terms of the sidewalk could move forward, and then it would be back with staff to actually navigate the next steps with the developer. The benefit of doing that also is to allow those that have purchased homes in phase 3 to move in, because currently they are not able to move into their homes right now, and that's creating some other challenges in the community.
Your Worship, I just have to say that I have every bit of confidence in Chief Drakely in terms of his input to this motion. If he sees that a gate is fit to accomplish what is being asked for safety purposes of the residents of that structure, I'm fine with that. So I will be voting against the amendment, but I have to ask the question. Everybody has stated that there is a gate going in. Does the gate have to go in, or can we just remove that piece of fence? I'm going to ask the developer that because he happens to be here. Can we just remove a piece of fence to solve the issue?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I think it's very important that we pass this tonight so residents can move into their newfound homes, and we get by this little hiccup at this table tonight. Thanks.
Okay, we have a amended motion. We have an amendment on the floor. I'm going to call the motion. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? The motion is defeated. We'll now go to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? All in favor of the main motion? Opposed? The motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Now move to 11.8, which is budget amendment UBCM grant Next Generation 911. The fire chief available to speak to this?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the budget amendment report to allow for a UBCM grant application for fire engine CAD upgrades to include NextGen 911 software and hardware. The grant amount has been decreased to $90,500 as of Wednesday. The funds requested for extended warranties for the computers was declined by the UBCM and was not an eligible cost. So the grant amount is for $90,500. This was a last minute submission, but due to replacement cost of CADs, the application is currently on hold with UBCM until we receive council approval and resolution.
Okay, we have sorry, go ahead, Chief.
Nope, I was waiting for questions.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief Drakely. My question is the reduction in funding, does that leave us an unfunded obligation that we need to cover off to make us ready, or was it an optional feature?
It was an optional feature requested through the grant, and it was just something that was not covered and not eligible. It's for extended warranties for the hardware.
Oh, I see. So we just won't have extended warranties. We will have the regular one.
Correct. And that the hardware is looked after by the 911 technicians in Campbell River.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, just I guess out of curiosity, as this is a grant request, and it sounds like maybe the grant has already been verbally earmarked, but should, any grant can get denied. So just curious, if this grant were not to be received, is this a required tool that the city would then have to figure out funding for itself, or is this something that was already in the plan and the fire team has found a way to obtain this without cost to the taxpayer?
Through the chair to Councillor Almeida, you are correct. The grant has been applied for. There was a deadline that we were made aware of fairly late in the game by our assistant chief of dispatch in Campbell River. There is no current allotment for budget funding for this, and we were unsure if the budget is, or the grant is going to be put forth and supported next year by UBCM. So I did a hastily decision and put the grant in with the request that we don't have the council resolution at this point, but we are seeking it by today's date. So at that point, they accepted it, and they're just waiting on the resolution.
Thank you.
Yes. I'll make the recommended motion that council supports the application for the UBCM Next Generation 911 grant to implement a mobile data terminal upgrade and computer-aided dispatch deployment renewal project, and that council direct staff to oversee management of the grant and project once awarded, and further that council direct staff to amend City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw 2751 2025 to include the $90,500 grant revenue and related expenses as outlined in the May 8th, 2025 report to council titled Budget Amendment UBCM Grant Next Generation.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any further discussion before I call the motion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I sit on the North Island 911 board as a representative from our regional district, of which we are a part. The city is a part. The regional Cathette Regional District is a shareholder. I'll just say very briefly that the new generation 911 is a vast technological change from the 911 system we're used to and take for granted, pretty much. Essentially, it's going to allow for data to be conveyed over all the 911 systems across Canada. So it's regulated by the CRTC. It was expected to, there was a deadline, which was actually March this year, that almost nobody was ready. A very small percentage of the institutions and organizations that use 911. So it's all the way from telecommunications providers to fire departments to ambulance to a very broad spectrum of users. We're not ready. So that was extended by about 1.5 years till next year. And I just want to mention that North Island 911 is ahead of most other organizations in upgrading, doing all of the upgrades, which also will include, as is mentioned in this report, training for all the users. So we won't notice that much of a difference on the user end, on the calling 911 end, but the capabilities will be vastly improved. Operationally, that probably will be seen more. So the fire departments and all other emergency services will see those changes, but it's a very large change, and it involves major upgrades in technology. So I'm really glad to see this happen. And we're ahead of the game here. So I'm just really happy about this. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to 12.1, which is the Cathet Regional District Alternate Director Appointment. And do we have a motion?
Yep.
Did we vote on that already?
No.
Yeah, we did. And then he commented after the fact. So I was going to make a motion if that's okay.
If I may, Your Worship, I'd like to change this recommendation on 12.1, and I'll speak to that.
You want to make the motion instead? Okay, go ahead.
I would like to. Thank you. Councillor Isaacson's been providing an alternate for Councillor Elliott for a number of months, for quite a while, during this term, basically. When Councillor Doubt and I traded places, or I took Councillor Doubt's position on the RD board, I wasn't clear on that Councillor Doubt might be interested in actually being an alternate. So over the past 2 or 3 months, I investigated whether Councillor Isaacson could actually serve as an alternate for both Councillor Elliott and myself. I should have had a conversation with Councillor Doubt, but I didn't. And Councillor Doubt would be willing to be an alternate for me, obviously leaving Councillor Isaacson as an alternate for Councillor Elliott. So the recommendation I'd like to make is that Council appoint Councillor Doubt as Municipal Director alternate to the Cathet Regional District for Councillor Southcott, in addition to his present appointment as, let's just delete that last.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Almeida seconded the motion. Councillor Elliott.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Doubt for coming forward and being an alternate over there. It's a lot of work for everybody to cover off the regional district, as Councillor Doubt's well aware. I hope he's enjoyed his rest. I think Councillor Southcott's coming into his summer vacation time soon, so where he goes boating. And I support the motion.
Yeah, I just speak to it quickly. Yeah, I have no qualms with my name not being on there. I know we could legally have me sit in for one or the other if they were not present. But I think when Councillor Southcott first stepped down, it was unclear whether anyone else was willing. Everyone else seemed pretty tapped out. And so I was willing to sit as both, since I was always sitting at one. But having a second person there is great. So definitely support Councillor Doubt being that alternate.
Motion. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to committee recommendations. 13.1 is Four Tides Hospice Society Development Society activities and community standalone hospice facility. This was brought forward from the Committee of the Whole May 6, 2025 meeting. It's Councillor Southcott.
I'll read that recommendation, then we can debate it. I move that council direct staff to initiate a discussion with Fort Hyde's Hospice Society to provide clarity on city-owned lands that may be available and would meet the requirements to develop a standalone hospice facility.
By Councillor.
Speak to it. Thank you, Your Worship. I really appreciated, I think Executive Director Mallory Meeker of the Fort Hyde's Hospice Society visiting us on Tuesday, provided us with an update. This organization's been doing amazing work for 4 years. I hope that, in 10 years actually, I've followed it since the beginning, being a little more closely connected with it from an operational standpoint back then. I deeply appreciate their work, and I really hope that the city, there can be land that we could provide for this most worthwhile cause, so I really support it. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to new business, and 14.1 is a recommendation for contract award 2025 airport paving.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to present a report looking for a resolution from Council to give the award to BA Blacktop. The report in front of you outlines there was one bid received by the city for the airport paving tender. There's a photo that was brought up on the monitors behind you. We are looking at paving the parking lot as well as the taxiway and apron area. Coming back to what I was just speaking to, there's one bid received. It was compliant and it is going to be on schedule for the grant deadlines. So we are looking today to get a council resolution to proceed with the award.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify and specifically ask that this is within the budget that we have from the grant and not costing us extra.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
So Amita.
Thank you. I had a similar question because my math indicates that 729,000 plus GST is $6,300 over the $760,000 grant. Am I mathing that wrong, or?
The bid that was received is within budget. I'm not sure if maybe it's the taxes that we're looking at here.
The tax is not included in the grant? Is
the grant funding, when we're looking at budgets, it would be tax excluded on.
Okay.
That's right.
Palm.
Yeah, just through the chair, I'll just say that this is nice to see coming forward because the pavement around our airport for visitors here is deplorable, and it's been a long time coming. So I am very happy to support this recommendation, Your Worship. I could read it. We'll recommend that the council award contract number 2320-20-2346, 2025 airport YPW paving invitation to tender number 1220-20-0665 to BA Blacktop Limited in the amount of $729,888.26 plus GST.
Seconded by Councillor Isaacson. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to 14.2, which is the Powell River Community Forest Working Group draft terms of reference. Councillor Elliott, would you like to talk to that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Palm, myself, and Your Worship are part of a working group that has met a couple of times, and we came up with the draft terms of reference that are attached to the agenda, and we are bringing it to council, asking for them to approve the draft terms of reference so that it can be our not draft, but actual terms of reference. It's quite a simple thing. It talks about who's on the group and that we would last for the duration of this term. And the topics are the grants and all of the policies and things that we use to run our forest, community forest, and hoping to restrict our activities to making recommendations to council or the community forest board, and clearly says that we're not a decision-making body. Thank you. I can make the motion too. I move that council adopt the Powell River Community Forest Working Group draft terms of reference.
Southcott, the discussion, favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now move to 16, which is introduction of notices of motion. Just to be clear to those here and online, that when there's an introduction of notice of motion, there is no discussion on that. This will come forward at the next council meeting. Now to public clarification. Members of the
Your
public.
worship, just to, in the past, when notice of motions have come forward, because of the public and people online may not have a copy of what we have before us, those notice of motions were previously read out. Do you think that that's necessary at this point?
I don't think they were read out.
I mean, I've read out my notice of motion before, so the public's well aware.
I'm going to ask our acting corporate officer if he would provide us direction.
Your worship, it's certainly up to you if you would like the motions read out. It's not a requirement though. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Elliott.
I believe the incident or the time that Councillor Palm is speaking of is when he brought a notice of motion forward late after the publication of the agenda. And so we read it out because it wasn't on the agenda.
Now move to public clarification. Members of the public may ask questions to clarify items discussed during the meeting for a maximum of 2 minutes. Is anybody in the audience?
Catherine Yorlofson, I have a question. I don't understand what happened to the notice of motions. We don't deal with them?
Yes, the way it is now with our new procedure bylaws is that as a courtesy to council members, you put forward a notice of intent. And that simply allows them to consider the motion that will come forward at a later time. And with the procedure bylaw, there is no discussion on it. So it's simply a matter of adhering to our.
But can I speak to any one of those?
Fortunately, you can.
Even though it's written down here?
You can come to the next council meeting at which they will be put forward.
Okay.
Council. All right.
I have to make this comment. Okay, as
Sorry.
politely as
It has
possible.
to be a question.
Okay, I'll make it a question. Why do you seem to have so much trouble allowing us to ask a question that you haven't decided we should ask?
Elliott.
So in the case of notices of motion.
No, in general. This is the general.
Okay.
question.
Well, I can speak to the notice of motion.
Okay.
The intent of a notice is for notice, and we ourselves aren't supposed to talk about it until it actually comes forward for discussion. And so it becomes very difficult for us to have questions that we can't actually answer because we're not to speak to it until it comes forward on the proper agenda, because the notice is just that, it's just a notice, right?
Okay.
And the intention is everybody's aware that that particular motion will be made at the next council meeting.
The next one.
Yeah, and that's the time to talk about it. And so it's more to keep us in line and not talking about things we shouldn't be talking about.
Right.
It isn't really about trying to prevent the public from asking questions or getting answers. It's about helping council stay on track and not talk about stuff they're not supposed to be talking about.
Okay. Part of my reason for asking the question is because I've had 2 delegation requests denied for reasons that I think are peculiar. And I've had a conversation with Jessica Walls about one of those, and I find it answers peculiar. And what it seems to me is in the end result, unless you or staff decide that we, the community, can speak, we can't speak on that topic. That's a comment for me.
Okay. Councillor Doubt, you.
Oh, I put up my hand to answer your first question. And
Are you okay?
so the notice of motion are a courtesy that one council member makes to the other members of council. It simply is an announcement that a motion will be made and on the agenda for the discussion at the next meeting. You're a member of the public, you're here, you know ahead of time this item will be on our next council agenda. You can prepare comments that you might want to make under the comments section. You can listen to the debate, you can watch the votes, and then after the discussion is over, you can ask questions about what happened. You know, that's an effort by council to be transparent and open so people have an opportunity to comment beforehand and to ask questions after. That's simply what that's about. As to the delegations, I don't have any information on what you're talking about requests for delegations. I haven't seen them, so I can't answer anything about that.
Okay. Councillor Isaacs.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to reiterate, I can understand why members of the public who have opinions or questions of council are frustrated when they feel like they can't fit in a box to find a time to ask them and to be answered. What's difficult for us, or what the intention of council meetings are, to conduct our business in public. And so the purpose of these meetings is not to have town halls with back and forth every 2 weeks, but to conduct our business in public. And so the expectations of the public and the purpose of our business meetings sometimes feel like they're at conflict or at odds. And so that's understandable. So if a member of the public has a question that they want asked, for example, of staff in a process, sometimes I will receive questions from members of the public who are like, I have a question about this agenda item, you know, and because I read every email that I get, I will sometimes go, oh, that's a good question. I need the answer to that question in order to make a decision on whatever the item is before me. And so there are other ways to ask questions to help individual members of council make decisions based on the answers. But because the purpose of these meetings is to conduct our business in public, it rubs against sometimes the interests of the community members. And then with respect to the denial of delegation requests, we have updated our procedures bylaw, and we have excluded some reasons to allow delegation requests. And that was a decision of council and our passing of that procedure bylaw, and staff are following that. And so I want to make sure that, and this is true of development variance permits as well, staff must make recommendations based on policy that's been passed by council. Sometimes those policies or bylaws have been passed by council like 15 years ago or 30 years ago, but that's still the framework with which they're operating. There are some delegations that are in discretion, there's some decisions that are in discretion that's delegated, but ultimately these are things that are passed by council and that staff are working within. So any frustrations about the procedure bylaw and the rationale, like that's because I wanted to quickly add, our corporate officer, interim acting corporate officer, has suggested, you know, as we're testing out our procedure bylaw, see how it goes. And if there's things that we want to collect and change in the future, then we should be collecting those to consider for updates in the future. And so if you're rubbing up against something, let us know, and we'll consider it. We might not agree with you, but we'd consider it. So just a little bit more context around that frustration. Thanks.
Mr. Galinsky, do you have a question? Anybody else in the audience have a question?
My question is, does anybody else feel it was inappropriate for the Director of Engineering to leave before the question and answer period? Because we had many questions for him. And that's a little bit frustrating. And, and I'm fine with waiting for 2 more weeks while we discuss and get to the bottom of it. We're talking about Lot 4, Cranberry, because I've waited a year. And one of the councillors had talked about the red tape that you have to go through and how we're trying to reduce that to in order to build. And
would you
so an extra 2 weeks over a year is not a big
question that
deal.
was asked?
Yes, I'd like to just say to the speaker that, first of all, this is a question period of council. Staff are more than happy to meet with you, and I'd be available tomorrow. I can make sure that my colleague can also be available. If you have a question of council, that would be the opportunity for tonight. But it sounds more like you have questions specific to our engineering team.
Thank you.
I can provide you with something. Yeah. Cheers.
Do we have anybody online?
Business over, adjourn.
Great. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good job, Mayor. Only 8:45. Just kidding. Thinking our staff are here quite late.